Welcome to Significant Brothers. I'm Chase.
I'm Cray.
And I'm Brad.
And today we are talking about heists.
Get heist.
I don't know if you guys know who won the Heistman Trophy last year for college football.
He really stole the show.
Cray, I know you don't watch that many sports, but it's actually called the Heisman Trophy.
I know what it's called.
Grifts, tricks, slips, fix, cons, dons, stings, flings, scams, shams, crime, hard time, hoo-has, bamboozlery, and shoplifting. These are all things that could fall under the category of heists if they're executed properly. I'm going to tell you guys about one particular heist that is involved with one particular individual who people called the king of all robbers. This event happened in the 1860s So, this organization, they were going to steal from the Manhattan Savings Institution, which is an establishment that carried money, but also safety deposit boxes filled with jewelry, diamonds, what have you. Also bonds, which is important to this. Some people who kept their assets there: Andrew Carnegie, John D. Rockefeller, and Cornelius Vanderbilt, to name a few. Wealthy individuals, high-rolling place. So I'm going to Tarantino this. I'm going to tell you what happened. I'm going to tell you that they successfully stole the money.
What?
They ended up stealing from the institution $3 million, which included bonds and other paraphernalia that would be worth that if you sold it on the market. So, assumedly jewels or whatever. But nowadays, it would be worth about $65 million in this one run. Enough to retire on, surely.
Hokey Pete's.
That's a lot. So now, let's go back and find out how they did this, and who the ringleader is. George Leslie was the ringleader. He was the mastermind behind the operation. Up until the point where this specific heist happened, he had stolen from a lot of banks. And between 1869 and 1878, they say he made up for about 80% of the bank robberies that happened in the country.
Wow.
Holy cow.
So, I'm assuming not a lot of people were really robbing banks back then.
Either that or they didn't have the efficient techniques that this guy did. Also, maybe not a lot of bank robbing. But what's interesting is they didn't know. He was never caught during his lifetime, so they didn't know that it was him. They just knew that there were a lot of bank robberies happening. Obviously, if he's never been caught, there's no way of knowing that it's him, because he wasn't like writing on his Twitter like, just rob the bank. Nobody knew. No one was coming up. No one was stepping forward. So in all of his time stealing, though, no one was harmed. Not a single shot was fired. And like I said, there was no dynamite. What he did when he moved to New York City is he found a way to slip himself not only into vaults, but into high society. He started going to balls, operas, and hanging out at nice bars to kind of fit the profile that he was going for, because if he was going to memorize how to get into the bank, he needed to put money into that particular bank. So he wanted to appear as a wealthy individual, and so he put almost all of his money in the bank in order to just like go back and forth and like check the place out and get sort of a memorization of it. And you might ask, why does he need to know what the whole place looks like more than one time? Because this guy would build scale models of the bank in a warehouse and practice over and over again breaking into the bank that they're actually going to break into.
So, like 1-to-1 scale models?
Yeah, like they weren't just like small little things or like just, a drawing. Like, you're here, I'm the X, you're the O. You come out to the front, I'll be in the van. Nothing like that. He actually, he would turn the lights off too in the event that the lights would be off were in the bank that they were robbing. So he would try to make it the most difficult conditions for robbing the bank by preparing in their warehouses.
He sounds kind of paranoid, but maybe that's a good thing for a robber.
I mean, he was never caught. So he was pretty anal about it, and I guess, you didn't even need to know that he built up the sets to call him OCD about this, because the fact that it took him 3 years to rob this bank meant that he wanted to do it right. And but you might be wondering, still, I haven't gotten to it, how did he get into the vaults? There was this one thing that bank robbers eventually used that was called the Little Joker, and it was a device that they would plant inside the handle of the vault, the thing that they twist, that would make marks. It would just cut little marks that would say when the whoever was turning the vault would stop. So they like turn it to 2, stop, make a mark, turn it to 3, stop, make a mark, and it would just go through the entire combination. So then when they went into the bank, they could go take it, look, and be like, oh, this is probably what it is.
I wonder what the motivation was, you know, if he was an architect and he turned robber, like, why?
I honestly don't know. Maybe there was... Well, he actually, when he left Cincinnati, he said to his friends he wants to go to New York to make some easy money. So I assume he was just in it for the money. A lot of money.
He must have been a regular Gatsby. You know, he probably had all these grand balls, and everyone's like, how do you get your money? And he's like, old sport. I stole it.
Importer-exporter.
Yeah, importer-exporter.
If you guys are wondering, though, he had to install the Little Joker into the vault. How did he do that?
Inside man.
Inside man. That would be a good one. Not the case. He had to break in. He broke into the banks at least like 2 or 3 times prior to actually breaking into the vault for the final time. So he would just get a feel. Like he was very familiar with the places, and evidently there wasn't very good security up to that point on getting in and out. But so he was very. He had to go in a few times before he actually went in for the final time. But here's the thing: he never went in the final time.
What?
Despite the heist being a success, he was getting a little friendly with one of his colleagues' wives, and they popped him off. They took him out to the suburbs, put a bullet in his head, and then so they ended up going on doing the heist without him. And eventually they were all caught, and they only actually didn't steal that much because the bonds were in other people's names. Kind of useless at that point.
Yeah.
So they ended up killing him. But the reason I still include him in this heist is it probably wouldn't have gone through had he not been the leader of this ragtag group of gangsters that ended up killing him anyway. But, you know, he had a hand in the whole operation, never made it to the bank in the first place.
Well, you think they would have gone through with the operation and then killed him? Been like,
yeah.
Snakes told me you're going to give me 10%. And then, you know, they...
Is that a fact?
Is that a fact? And then they pump his gut full of lead.
1, 2, 10.
That's how it should have gone down.
Craig, do you have any heists that tickled your criminal fancy?
You know, I do. I do have some. So, the year is 2007 in Dubai, and 2 Audi S8s roll up and break through these glass doors and walls into a jewelry store. And 2 men come out with a bunch of bags and hand axes and handguns. Well, they're pickaxes, but I guess you could call them hand axes if you want.
Was this a diamond mine?
It was
A jewelry
close.
store.
Yeah, it was a jewelry store. So
I see where they got confused with the pickaxes.
Oh, I think they used the pickaxes to get into the cases.
You sure they weren't mining for nose gold?
I'm almost positive. I don't think that's running very high these years.
Much less as adults. It was valuable as a child.
In this group, they got about $3.4 million. This entire operation took them about 2.5 minutes to do. They got that much money. They're a huge organization. They are well organized, and they are called the Pink Panthers. So, they are kind of nicknamed after the movies. What?
I hope so. Well, I was gonna ask which came first, but
the movie,
wow.
yeah, the movie definitely came first. I think a newspaper nicknamed them that, and then everyone just kind of started labeling them as that. I don't really know what they call themselves. I know Interpol, the International Police Organization, calls them Pink Panther, and they even have a group specifically for policing them. So this heist specifically, they did it near 9 p.m., near the end of rush hour, so they knew the direction they would be escaping from it, they would be sort of traffic-free, but the direction that the police would be coming from, they would be hitting a lot of traffic so that they could get away with it. And so they would park their cars somewhere, they would torch them, and then go away in an anonymous third car.
Torch them?
Yeah, they would torch the 2 cars that they originally drove with. And they apparently only really do Audis. So I'm not sure why, if that's like they watched The Italian Job and they were just like, oh man, this is going to be our thing.
I feel like if you're just going to torch the car, I mean, 1, you might want to pick a cheaper car. 2, who's going to sell you an insurance policy if you've been known to torch all of your cars?
Well, if you're the Pink Panthers, you don't care because you have a lot of money.
Like, what kind of car should we get? I don't know. Something that we can get outy here.
Boo!
Yeah. Maybe Audis are more flammable than other cars.
I hope not. But
Yeah.
maybe they are. Maybe they just know how to light one on fire.
There's 2 equally identical cars. One's slightly more flammable than the other one, but it's cheaper. What one do you got?
You get... I don't know. It depends.
I
just feel like...
what you value.
Well, I just feel like if someone told me, yeah, the Jeep's more flammable than what the Volvo is, it's just like, okay, but my Jeep catching on fire is not an issue at all. It could just be a little bit more flammable, and it's not like, whatever.
Yeah, but we have to keep in mind that this isn't even a situation right now. This organization has robbed places in the Middle East and Japan and Asia and the United States. So basically everywhere they've robbed places. And they're sort of... It's not like an Italian-style mob or something, you know, where there's one head honcho, and then you have these induction ceremonies. They're just sort of a loose network of...
They don't meet in the back of an Italian restaurant?
No.
Is that what you're telling me?
They don't. They don't eat mom's spaghetti together and then go to their daughter's wedding and kill people there. I think that's what happened in Godfather.
I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse.
Yeah, I think that's what happened. This is the gist of the movie. I've never seen it. So they're more organized, like a loose network of separate teams that like to share methods and like contact information with each other is sort of how they operate. And there's this good Guardian article on this person who would interview people from the Pink Panthers, and I guess their moral high ground is kind of like, you know, we don't really hurt anybody and we steal from the rich. As to whether they give to the needy, I don't think it's very clear. I think they just sell the diamonds back to the legal market or something like that, so they just get sold again. So I guess they're really just benefiting themselves. Oh, and I never even told you guys why they got the name, the Pink Panthers. Like, I told you, newspaper and Interpol kind of gave them that name. But when raiding someone's flat, who I think was part of the Pink Panthers, they found a big blue diamond in a tub of face cream in their flat, which is apparently a gimmick that was in the 1963 Return of the Pink Panther movie. So that's why they got that name, because of the face cream.
I see.
Yeah.
Wait, so were they trying to do like a bit off of that movie?
I guess so. I don't...
So they wanted the name.
Maybe they wanted that name, and if so, they got it. I think it's a pretty good name. You know, they're stealing diamonds. That's pretty appropriate.
Brad, do you have a heist of any sorts of the Canadian variety?
So what is as Canadian as is American as apple pie?
A maple leaf?
Close. Maple syrup. But I am not necessarily talking about a heist, although a heist is a major part of the story, but how officials may have used a heist in order to shut down a questionably legal maple syrup organization that existed outside of the cartel.
Ooh.
Wow.
Yes, on July 30, 2012, Mikel, it's French Canadian, so we're just gonna call him Michael G. He arrived at the Global Strategic Maple Syrup Reserve to audit their holdings. Barrels were stacked 6 high and hundreds deep in each barrel.
Is this like the Federal Reserve of Canada, but in maple syrup form?
They basically handle almost all of the maple syrup that goes through Quebec. And they produce a large, I think 80% of the maple syrup in the world. So I think they have the right to call it the Global Strategic Maple Syrup Reserve.
Yeah, that name is very fitting, actually. I thought it was cocky at first. It's not.
Michael G., he decided that it would be smart to climb on top of one of these 16,000 barrels to get a better view. But then it started to tip over because it was empty. Well, it was actually filled with water. One of the barrels was filled with water, and it started to tip over. And they're like, well, this is weird. Because maple syrup weighs significantly more than water. And so they're like, okay, well, how many of these barrels aren't actually filled with water? So yeah, 60% of 10% of Quebec's annual production of maple syrup was gone. It was heisted. And we all know how important the identity of the maple leaf is to Canada. This is kind of a big blow to their sense of pride and joy. It's on their money, their uniforms. It's on their flag, the maple leaf, and even Justin Trudeau.
It's like if someone stole all of our stars.
Yeah, Justin Trudeau even sleeps in just covered in maple leaves every night. That's his blankets. So I need to make a correction. The Global Strategic Maple Syrup Reserve was actually formed in 1989. In 2002 is when it started introducing its quotas and started operating more as a legal cartel. So it was the GSMSR was formed after the Agriculture and Food Market decided to give maple syrup its own thing because they were that important. Production skyrocketed, prices fell, the producers suffered because there was just too much maple syrup being made, and it was just, they weren't getting enough money. People were foreclosing and yada yada yada. So 2002 the quotas were introduced, prices started to go back up, farmers made more. But in addition to the quotas, the GSMSR also decided, hey, part of the money that you guys make, you need to give it to us as well. People weren't necessarily happy about this kind of maple syrup tax that the legal cartel was putting on them. And you couldn't legally sell your maple syrup in Quebec to anyone else except for the reserve. So if you're making too much, then you're just you're losing out on profits as well. So it's basically just the government they're regulating how much maple syrup's going out. So in 2012, the prices were stabilized. Syrup was kept in a warehouse with a top-notch security team of one person who checked in once a day to make sure everything was okay. So all of the maple syrup is just kept in this one place, guarded by one man who stopped by every now and then. And that's when it got stolen. So, Etienne Saint Pierre, he was 69 years old. He was retired and started a sugar farm in the early 1990s. Just because, you're retired, you have time to do these kinds of things. And he lives in New Brunswick, which is a different province of Canada. He produced around 65,000 pounds a year, selling it to Quebec. It was unstable back then because this is before the GSMSR started getting good at regulating stuff. So he sold the maple syrup business to a son and just focused on shipping. A shipping business
just
for
exporting and importing.
Exporting and importing maple syrup.
Oh, good.
So he started doing that more, shipping most of his product to America. In 2006, he decided to get the bright idea to send out ads and flyers to maple syrup producers in Quebec. He's like, hey, I understand you're making too much maple syrup, and the government won't buy it from you, so I'll buy it from you, and then I can get your maple syrup out to different places and they'll buy it. So it's kind of like an under the table illegal operation, not necessarily illegal in New Brunswick, but definitely in Quebec, and the Quebecan government was not very happy about this. So they're like, hey, we're going to investigate you and demand payment for the damages you've caused and this lost revenue that we're having. So St. Pierre's like, whatever, you can't do that. And so he ignored all of their demands. And after discovering the theft, because this is all taking place around the same time, their investigation happened in 2012, around the time of the heist, they decided, we can kind of investigate him as well amongst the 300 other people in the industry that were investigated. So police show up at his door with a warrant, but it was a Quebecian warrant, so his assistant told him, no, you can't do that.
Is it because he was a New Brunswickian? Is that why?
Yeah, so that's why the warrant didn't count. So they eventually came back with the New Brunswick warrant to search, and because they couldn't find the key, they had to crowbar open the warehouse on his property.
Wow.
And they found a bunch of maple syrup. And they charged him amongst 22 other people. And as far as we know, he had nothing to do with the heist, but that is how they were able to shut down those semi-sketchy, kind of legal, but the cartel didn't like it organization.
So they used that heist to shut down the people who were not responsible for the heist.
Yes.
So no one knows where the syrup actually went?
As far as I know, no, they don't know where the syrup went. They were able to trace the syrup, like to where it was getting sold. A lot of it made its way to the United States, and, getting stolen goods back from across the border can be tricky. And I don't think we take our syrup as seriously as the Canadians, so we're like, it's just syrup, guys, just chill.
It's all my pancakes, I can't give it back.
That's about all I got, guys.
Hey, thanks for listening. You can subscribe to us on iTunes, and if you want to subscribe to us on tinyletter.com, you can keep up with all of our significant happenings.
And you can also find us on podbean.com. Just search for Significant Brothers. Make sure to subscribe and maybe even like one of our episodes. It really helps. And if you ever want to email us, say maybe how much you love this podcast or a topic suggestion, you can email us at sigbrotherspod@gmail.com.
And if you ever feel like you want to tell us something, but you only want to do it in 140 characters or less, you can find us on Twitter at Significant Bros.